I'd like to invite our last speaker for the panel. I'm tempted to call her a femocrat. A femocrat is a feminist, a gender advocate, a women's rights advocate who brings change from the womb of a bureaucracy. So Alanna Armitage is the director of UNFPA for the Geneva office. And my goodness, we even worked on that resolution on maternal mortality as a human rights issue. And over to you, Alanna.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Yaransai. Good morning, everyone. Oh, okay. It's on now? Thank you. So good morning, everyone. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, friends, women's human rights defenders. It's such a pleasure to be here this morning. With your energy and your warmth. No one would know it's raining and gray outside in Geneva. I also wanted to start with a personal story to share with all of you. When I began in the UN system 23 years ago, I was the only female professional in the office, and this was an office of about 60 people. Now that experience was very different than the experience I had 5 years ago when I was the head of our office in Brazil, and I shared that role with 6 other female heads of agencies. I can tell you what a difference it makes. So women in leadership really does make a difference, as we've heard already. But I wanted to begin my remarks by thanking Yaradzai, my friend and our fearless leader, and the NGO Committee on the Status of Women Geneva for bringing us all together at this critical juncture, this challenging turning point for women's rights and for the broader development agenda. And I think around the world, eyes are locked on the clock as it counts down what's left of the MDGs, 421 days remaining to deliver on an agenda that remains unfinished, especially for women and girls. All of us here today share a common vision, and that vision is to achieve rights, empowerment, and gender equality for all women and girls by the year 2030. We know that we need change that is transformational. Change that tackles structural inequality, violence, and discrimination against women and girls. And we know that to get to the roots of the problem, we need a framework that's based on human rights, the principles of accountability, transparency, and inclusion. And we also know that sexual and reproductive health and reproductive rights are on the front line of our common struggle for women and girls' rights and their empowerment and gender equality. Now, these issues are sometimes sensitive. They're sometimes difficult to talk about. But we do know that without them, we cannot plan our own lives, and we cannot plan the lives of our families. Today's threats cross borders and require a response that is global. Just looking around us today, as we're meeting here, we see that Ebola is wiping out many of the gains of the past few years in the 3 hardest hit countries of Sierra Leone, Guinea, and Liberia. We also see extremist and political groups reversing gains for the rights of women and girls, at times with unimaginable brutality. I want to pay public tribute to the women around the world, many of whom are in this room today, for the strong role you have played in pushing for progress and for the role that you will continue to play in making sure that our agenda remains strong and vibrant. As the international community finalizes the new development framework for the next 15 years, we can be very grateful that we have the knowledge and commitments that have emerged from the global review of the Cairo at 20 review process and will continue to emerge through the Beijing+20 review process, including the UNECE review, which we are undertaking now. So from the perspective of UNFPA, United Nations Population Fund, what do women and girls need? The review of the 20 years of the implementation of the Cairo Program of Action confirmed that great gains have been won. It is true, and we should so celebrate, and I will not go into them all because I know time is short, that we have achieved many gains. But this welcome progress hides a troubling truth, that the fruits of development gains have not been fair, nor just, nor distributed evenly. Huge inequalities means that millions of people are denied access to the fruit of human progress, and nowhere is this more true than for women and girls. Right now, as I speak to you, A young girl, perhaps no more than 10 or 11, most likely living in a remote rural area, is being forced to leave the only home she's ever known. Frightened, confused, and above all, powerless to stop the transaction that's taking place, she's married off to a much older man, a complete stranger. Today is the day that her childhood ends, and along with it, her education, her aspirations, and any chance of reaching her full potential. A brutal violation of her human rights. This cruel scenario plays out again and again, over and over. Every 2 seconds, a girl under the age of 18 is married, most often without free, prior, or informed consent. Yet despite this reality, and despite the statistics, discriminatory laws, practices, and attitudes continue to keep women and young people, particularly adolescent girls, from accessing sexual and reproductive health services, including contraception, and realizing their reproductive rights. We must and we can do better. At UNFPA, we will continue to stand by the world's women and young people, particularly the most marginalized adolescent girls. We will continue to advocate for the world that we want, a world where the reproductive rights of women and girls are upheld so that they can decide freely and without coercion about their sexuality and reproduction. A world where universal access to quality sexual and reproductive health will ensure better health outcomes. And a world where the capabilities of adolescents and youth are recognized through investments in education and health, including comprehensive sexuality education and access to youth-friendly sexual and reproductive health services, which will enable young people to delay childbearing and acquire the skills needed for a long and productive life. But at the same time, and I look at Sylvia here, at the same time, we will continue to work for a society of all ages where the rights and health of older women are also kept front and center. Ladies and gentlemen, we are at an inflection point in history, and we need to work together to ensure that the vision of Cairo, that the vision of Beijing, and the gains that we've made to date feed into the post-2015 development agenda. UNFPA looks forward to working with all of you in these efforts. And as we work together, let us envision the human face of development. Let us picture that 10-year-old girl as the person that we're working for. Every young girl, regardless of where she lives or her economic circumstances, has the right to fulfill her own potential. We can ensure that she does, and we must. The sustainable future we all want depends on it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Alanna. And when you invited us to envision the little girl, I actually saw my daughter flash in my face, but also each one of us saw and envisioned people in our own lives, in our own communities, but also in the world. I would like to open the floor for comments, questions. I know that we have